Hello everybody. This video is completely unplanned. I did not intend to make a video at all today, but I was just thinking about how many other videos I've uploaded lately, and the fact that I said how many times in videos that I was going to talk about certain of my books and that I hadn't yet, and then I uploaded other ones that have nothing to do with my books and I still haven't talked about those specific books. So I decided to make a video about the books that I promised you I'd talk about ages ago. If you happen to hear that scratching, that was my cat galloping off into the who knows what. My cats are crazy. And you might be able to hear my music playing. Most of it's by Alan Walker. He's a awesome DJ from Sweden that you should listen to. And you can probably also hear the traffic outside because there's a ton of traffic outside. So all that rushing and swooshing, it's been raining all day. It was all raining all day yesterday. All of that. And the banging is because the potholes are this deep. Anyway. A quick video. It is going to be a quick video. My cat is galloping all over the place. Aska does that sometimes. She gets into the mood and off she goes. Don't attack the dog, please. Aska. Aska. Leave Tori alone. Anyway. My nose is itchy all of a sudden. Anyway. Why do I do this? I told you this wasn't a planned video. This isn't what I'm really in the mood for. I mean, I'm in the mood for it, yes, but that's partially Vicky's fault before she went off to work because she went and got me into the... Aska, you're nuts! She's on the... Aska! She's on the back of the couch and she's literally just about to chew on my sweater! Now my face is all red. This is... I think I'm just going to upload this as a random one, if anything. No, never mind. Just... Anyway, the fun of... okay. So, the books that I wanted to talk about, specifically. Book I've talked about before, King of Duvessa. I don't know how much more I can really say about that book. I could do, a lot about that book specifically, because I love it so much. I can't remember what I said about it in the other video, so I'll just kind of I wanted to... say that that's one of my favorite books that I've written simply because it just flowed so well when I wrote it. It practically wrote itself, and it was partially written during NaNoWriMo, so that's why it wrote itself. It literally all came from a dream. I think I did say, not all of it, just the very beginning of it came from a dream and it just flowed out afterward. But there was years in between because I wrote that much of it, and then there was a year or something and I wrote that much of it, and then there was another year or two and I wrote the rest of it, and then there was a few months and I fixed the ending. So it took a while. But the way it is right now, I would literally be perfectly happy with besides spelling mistakes fixed, I would be perfectly happy to have it published exactly the way it is. I love that book. It's a book that borders on supernatural kind of magic. There's only kind of one kind of magic, and I don't really talk about how the magic is, but basically I think I mentioned all that before. So what I didn't mention that I forgot that I should have mentioned was the fact that a lot of it is written from the viewpoint of a 5-year-old boy and his perspective on things, and I actually like the way I wrote him because to me he sounds enough like a child, but a child with some maturity because of the world that he lives in. Some books I read them and it's from this viewpoint of a child, and I'm like, you've never spent any time whatsoever around a child, have you? I was literally reading in Sherlock Holmes, there's this child that's supposed to be 4 years old, and I was literally reading it out loud to my sister. The way the sentences that girl forms and how her reasoning and everything, I'm like, you've literally never spent any time whatsoever around a child, because that doesn't sound like a child at all. It sounds like a 50-year-old woman. It doesn't even sound like a teenager. It sounds like a 50-year-old woman. No, that's not a child. That's not how they talk. That's not how they think. That's not anything. Anyway, as you can see, I'm all suddenly riled up. Thanks a lot, Aska. I don't even know where she went. She's not on the back of the coach anymore. So, but that's King of Duvessa, and there's lots of other ones I could talk about. But the one that I wanted to specifically talk about right now, because I kept promising you I would, and then I kept avoiding it, is this book right here, and I'll finally show you what it is. This tattoo, which is Someone Else's Opinion, Book 1. This, and yes, I wrote it under that name. That is my pen name. It's backwards for you, I know. I'm sorry. because the camera's forward facing so I can see what I'm doing. That's the back of the book. You can't read it because it's backward. Pause it, and if you can read backwards, then you're... There you go. That's the picture of me, because, I don't know, I get this weird fear of people not believing when, like, I'm under a pen name, so if I came out with my real name and said this is my book, I've got this weird fear of people not believing me. So I put my picture on there so you can't deny that it's me. I know, I'm odd. This book is close to 80,000 words, I believe it is. This book was also a NaNoWriMo story, and most of it, just about all of it, was written during NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. The whole point is to write a 30,000 word novel in a month, and it ended up being at least 60,000, and then I added and edited and all the rest of that stuff. But the reason that I hadn't brought this book up before is because of the topics and stuff that it deals with. It is about... The main character's name is Tio, and he's 125 years old, and he has no idea why. He has no idea why he keeps living, and more importantly, he has no idea why, no matter how he dies, he goes into, like, a death coma, which is basically he feels all the pain, and then he blacks out, and sometime later, he wakes up, and all of his injuries and everything are gone. He's just continuing to live like nothing ever happened. And he has no idea why, and he's been trying to figure it out for the past 102 years, because he was 23 the last time life was normal for him, and he has no idea what happened. But the reason that I wanted caution before anybody goes looking up this book, which I hope you will go and look it up, because you can still find it on Kindle. There's a picture in the front of the book that on Kindle, it looks ridiculous because it messes it up. It really does. This is Tio's tattoo. This is what it looks like. I decided to put a picture of it so you can actually see it. And that's table of contents. But the reason that I wanted to make a caution at the beginning of this one is specifically because of who originally asked about my writing, that originally sent me off on this. The thing is, the beginning of this book, the very first number of scenes deals with heavy abuse. There's enough description of heavy abuse in the very beginning of it that if you have any kind of abuse in your own background, physical abuse or anything like that, you have to either skip the first little bit or just be very aware of that it's detailed enough that it could be very triggering for some people. So you have to be careful when reading it. Maybe that warning is enough and you can read it and be okay, but Tio's original family, he suffered major abuse. Him and almost all of his siblings and his mother suffered major abuse from the hands of their father. So it is heavy trigger warning at the beginning, and then topics like that do come up later in the book. And that's why I say, please, if you've got any trauma in your past, any real life trauma in your past, please be careful reading this book. And the other reason that I specifically wanted to say something about this book before you actually go and read it is the fact that one of the characters in this book, I wrote this book back in 2008. In 2008, I looked up what, at that point, I still thought it was called multiple personalities disorder. Because back then, when I looked it up online, I actually could find barely any about it. Never mind, like, in media forums, in movies and stuff like that, which it wasn't really big on there. But even just, like, legitimate information about it, it was not very easy to find. And I swear, back in 2008, I never came across the word dissociative identity disorder, d.i.d. I never came across it anywhere, an official or not official. All I found was multiple personality. So, in this book, I use incorrect terms and incorrect etc. because even, I can't remember which year it was that 2016 is when I published it, and at that point I hadn't actually looked up too much more about it, I don't think. When I originally wrote this book, I wasn't necessarily planning on it being a series or anything. I wasn't necessarily planning on there being more. But the thing is, she has d.i.d, so there's some incorrect terms in here and stuff, and I probably didn't completely portray her properly. And in 2000... what year was it? 2019. At the very end of 2019, I was reading a CSI book that mentioned multiple personalities again, or I think in there it actually called it d.i.d. Now I can't remember. But either way, it mentioned it again, and I was like, you know what? This woke up a flame in me again, because I already wrote the second book to this, and I was perfectly happy with it, and I was good with it. Ready to the point to have it published, and I wanted it published for the past couple of years. And now I'm starting to think that it's a good thing that I haven't, because it actually, Archan is the name of the character. Archan is the name of her system. And there's a lot of terms that if you don't know anything about d.i.d, you're going to have to go and look it up and stuff, because I've learned so much about it, and I still don't know everything about it, because every single system that I've met online, or that I've followed, or that I know anything about, they are all so vastly different. They're just, like, every human being is completely different and unique to themselves. And then when you have d.i.d, you can have so many different altars in your system. I've heard of very little ones that only have maybe 3. I don't know if I've ever read about any that have only had 2, but I've heard you could have only 2. But I've heard of ones that are very little with only have 3, and then I've heard of ones that have thousands of altars and fragments and all of that. So and when you combine that many different altars and stuff, you're gonna have, like, I mean, it's vastly different. It would be like if you took real life, if you went into a building and you saw 30 people in there, and then you went into another building and you saw another 30 people, the atmosphere in those rooms, the whole way they interact with each other is going to be completely different, because those 30 people are completely different people. And it's like the same with a system, as far as I can tell. Every one of those altars is different, and they're all so unique that the system, that person, those people, they're all so different. And the things they went through in life are very different, and all of the rest of that stuff. So on one hand, I'm very happy with the way I wrote Archan. On the other hand, I have come to realize that she's not nearly as consistent as she needs to be. I did not do enough research about what kind of trauma she holds, and what her altars are there for, and what kind of triggers she would have. So in the book, unfortunately, because I enjoyed all of her altars so much, I wanted them all to be in the story properly and for you to hear about them, because she's actually not the main character. When I first made this book, maybe it was a mistake, maybe that's where I first went wrong, I wanted there to be a full cast of completely unique characters, so I set them up with extremely different backgrounds, extremely unique backgrounds, and that's how she ended up with d.i.d. But like, I think there's 5 of them. Tio, Shai, Kirill, Manahar, and Archan. That's my 5 original characters. But Tio is the absolute main character. It follows him. You don't see scenes without him in it. Not in the first book, at least. In the second book, it starts to go into more, because I loved my characters so much that I wanted you to know more about them. So in the second book, it follows a lot more Manahar and Archan and stuff. So you see Archan a whole lot more. And Ask is being nuts again. Now she's playing with a ball that you can probably hear. But Archan is much more prevalent in the second book, and I had never talked to a system before about what it's like with d.i.d and all that stuff, because I am so afraid of hurting people, and especially when there's someone that has had that much happen to them in their past, I'm even more afraid of what might actually hurt them. And when you don't know someone very well, it's even harder to know what will hurt them and what's okay to talk about. So I was very afraid to actually approach any of them, and I'm extremely afraid to ask any of them to read these books, not just because of Archan, but because of what Tio himself is like, and what other characters are like, and what kind of topics come up, and I am very afraid of them getting hurt by it, or offended by it, or upset with it, or whatever. So, but I did finally talk to a system. She's an author as well, and I finally did get to talk with her. I'm not even sure which altar I was talking to, because she never said what her name was. I'm assuming which one I talked to, because, anyway, I'm kind of assuming, but she never said which altar I was actually talking to, so I don't know her name specifically. But either way, I did finally talk to someone about it, and she was telling me a lot of things, and I was realizing a lot of things. But yeah, I really started to realize how much work I need to do on Archan, to make her a lot more consistent. And the more systems that I see and kind of meet, like I say meet because I follow them online, and I've actually been able to talk to a few more of them, because I've found systems that are not as popular, that they don't have as many followers, so it's easier for them to see comments and interact with you in the comments. A lot of the ones that I followed before had already had like millions of followers, so they weren't able to comment. If you commented, they weren't able to respond. But yeah. I've suddenly got a whole ton of work to do, especially on the